This is translucent stone. It's real stone, these are slate to be specific, that's cut really thin. So thin that you can see light through it. And it looks really cool, so I'm gonna build a guitar with it. I've seen stone like this used for bars or backsplash where it's backlit and it looks like it's glowing, so I figured if I applied that same concept to a guitar, it might end up looking pretty interesting. To me, the practical way to build this was to first make a wooden perimeter for the guitar body, similar to what I did on the Infinity guitar, but on this one, I think it can be designed a bit more clever. First step was to make a few templates. We used template bits with varying size bearings to make as perfect a female and male pattern for the body as we could. A CNC would have made this a breeze, but that's one machine I don't have in the shop, so we pretty much do everything the old-fashioned way. And I say we because this is yet another project that my buddy Packard has helped out on to make things go a bit quicker. The perimeter rings are being built out of Paulownia, which is kind of an unusual wood choice for a guitar body, but it's incredibly lightweight, which will help limit the weight of the guitar while also being really strong. And it has great workability, which is a nice feature considering how much carving and cutting we're gonna have to do to it. The design is pretty simple. Build a perimeter ring the shape of the guitar and incorporate a neck pocket space into it to mount the neck to. And then we added a sizable 45-degree chamfer to the top and bottom of the ring. This will come into play later when we add the stone to the body. Now we get to the stone, and this stuff is surprisingly flexible for being rock. It has a composite backing on the backside that allows it to flex like that and not crumble. The stone has a lot of texture to it, little mounds or crevices all throughout it. So we decided on adding a flood coat of epoxy to both the top of the stone and the composite side, so essentially sandwiching the stone in between two layers of epoxy. This gives us a flat, level surface that will work for the top of the guitar and also provide a considerable amount of strength. And the epoxy bonds to the stone super well. We did a number of tests on this beforehand on smaller scrap pieces. We have two different slate panels, one that's more yellow-orange and the other that's more gray and black. So we're building two different guitars, one for each variation of stone. Got the stone panels cut out on the bandsaw. Having it sandwiched in epoxy helped to avoid any chip out while cutting it to shape. It did dull the bandsaw blade pretty quickly, but that's a small price to pay for getting the job done here. Template bit on the router table to get it perfectly formed to the body template. And then we added a 45-degree chamfer to the entire side of the stone top as well. Routed out a recess where the stone will meet the neck pocket area. Got the guitar ring pretty much done. Got bevels on both the top and bottom now, and a bevel on the stone top. But as you can see, it doesn't quite fit into place yet. This horn's too skinny to get the chamfer bit in there, so we'll have to just chisel that out by hand, and then hopefully this top will sit into place. This is the back of the guitar, which is pretty similar, almost exactly the same as the top in terms of chamfers. This back panel needs to be removable on the finished guitar, and the original plan was to drill through the panel and into the ring where we can install threaded inserts to secure the back on. But with the chamfer, there's just less room than I was expecting to do this, so I think I'm gonna have to pivot and alter the design a bit here on the back. The new plan is to sand off the chamfer on the back panel, and then I can use one of the templates that we made earlier to fill a perimeter ring of epoxy around the panel. And now the panel has no chamfer, and I can recess it into the back of the body. And I can use the same template that I just used to route a perfectly sized recess into the back. This gives significantly more space to install the threaded inserts into the wood to secure the back panel on, and the black ring on the back will blend into the body since the sides will also be painted black. Black paint on the interior side of the back panels. Only the tops of these guitars will be lit up by the LEDs. For the necks, I'm doing bird's eye maple for one and flame maple for the other. A pretty odd heel design on these necks. It's shaped like this so that we can get the light from the LEDs right under the fretboard, and I'll explain this in a bit more depth here in a second. I'm carving in a chamfer to the neck pocket, and this neck has a weird heel shape to it. It's shaped like this so that the neck pocket is smaller and so that the fretboard can overhang the heel. And now that I've got chamfer on the neck block, it'll allow the LED light to go up under the fretboard, whereas if I just did a normal heel shape, there'd be no way to get the light right to the edge of the fretboard. We needed a way to diffuse the LED light under the stone panels, because without a diffuser, you can clearly see the individual LEDs and it just doesn't look good. There's a lot of different types of diffusers. These are just white plastic diffusers that do a really good job of spreading out the light. Glued those to the tops of the guitars since only the tops will be lit. Cut up a bridge block for each guitar on the table saw. I don't really think these are necessary since the top and bottom panels of the guitars are so thick, but it will make stringing the guitar a lot easier since these are going to be string-through guitars. So for the bridge block, we've got a bit of a pyramid design going on here so that there's enough wood for the screws to bite into, but this also allows for the light to go right up to the edge of the bridge, similar to what we did on the neck pocket. One thing I've learned over the years is that efficiency in the shop is key, and with thanks to this video sponsor Factor, I've got fresh, never frozen, delicious meals waiting to be eaten in my fridge to keep things rolling here in the shop. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. And they're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time to build stuff in the shop. Factor meals eliminate the hassle of prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Simply heat and savor the good stuff. Things can get pretty hectic here in the shop. Between building, filming, and editing, I don't always have the time to run to the grocery store, let alone prep and cook a full meal. With Factor, I can stay field and focused on making projects and videos for you guys without accidentally turning dinner into another project. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50burls to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50burls at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Traced out the bottom design so we'll know where to put the LEDs once we eventually get there. Got the diffusers that were glued to the tops cut out the shape and matched to the chamfer of the top. We weren't able to get the router bit to carve the entire chamfer, so the rest of it had to get matched to shape by hand. The neck pocket area on the wooden part is thicker than the chamfer, so we had to route out that area that's going to contact the neck mounting area. To mount the tops to the wooden perimeters, we added some glue to the neck pocket area and pressed the tops on. And then we used some foil tape and sealed up the edges on the entire top. This is all in prep to do a small flood coat from the inside to bond the stone top to the wood. Since the chamfers aren't perfect, a thin epoxy mix will get into all the inconsistencies in the chamfer between the wood and the stone top. I like to use foil tape to create a dam if it's on wood, since it sticks a bit better than Tyvek tape. We still use some Tyvek to do additional sealing on the top though, since that's epoxy. Making sure the tops are flat before we flood coat them. If we just glued the top to the wooden perimeter instead of flood coating, we would end up with a bunch of small pockets that would need to be filled, so this just felt like the more efficient move, and it'll ensure a good bond between the two. You gotta get some inserts inserted to mount this back panel on and make it removable. Inserts and back panel are pretty much done. On the top, we've got this pretty big wooden ring showing, and I could just add a round over to it. I think it'll look better with a really big chamfer on it instead. All the way up to the stone panel so that just the stone panel is on the top surface. I think that'll look pretty cool. bodies are pretty much into shape now. The end grain on this Paulownia is pretty choppy in certain areas, so I'm gonna coat the wood in epoxy to seal it and then assess any filling that it needs afterwards. The sides of this guitar, which is basically all of the wood parts, are gonna get painted black, so I'm not worried about any of the ugly end grain choppiness or any filling that I'll have to do since it's gonna get covered up anyways. The tops on these guitars are around 5/8 inch thick. That's like 16 millimeters. So I needed to recess the control knobs into the tops in order for the pots to reach through them. We're putting LEDs inside the guitars, so I need to mount a DC power jack to the side of the body to power the LEDs. There are battery powered LEDs, but they're not remotely bright enough for what we need here. Also, the battery packs on them are usually pretty big, which would end up blocking a bunch of the light inside of the guitar. Now just doing some filling on the body since it's a pretty grainy wood. The sides are gonna get painted anyways, so it's not gonna affect the look. Taped off the stone top and painted on a few coats of primer, which will help me do any spot filling it needs. Pulled off the tape on the top and sanded down both the top and back to get ready for a clear coat. But before I can do the clear coat, I've gotta paint the sides and chamfer black. So once again, I taped off the top and back. I brought them into my paint shack and sprayed them down with black. This is a 2K black that matches the 2K clear I'm gonna use on it afterwards. Let the black coat cure, and then I scuffed it up to get ready for the clear coat. Now it's just a bunch of wet sanding to level the paint, which is always tedious, but especially on anything with chamfers. Then buffing them out on the wheel to get them to a nice shine. And now these guitars are pretty much ready to get assembled. Got Black Winter pickups in one and Fat Cat pickups in the other, which are basically just P90s in humbucker form. Black hardware for one and chrome for the other. The only thing left to do was getting the back panel covered with LEDs. This was also a pretty tedious process, just little wires and a lot of connections to solder. Basically just tried to fill up the entire back panel with equal spacing between the LEDs. These LEDs are dimmable, so there will be some room for adjustment there. Got the back panel pressed in and mounted. Neck and strings go on, and these things are done. I'm really stoked on how these things came out. A couple things I would change if I were to do another version, which I think this project might be worth revisiting again at some point. This one's got all chrome hardware, bird's eye maple neck, ebony fretboard. And then on this one, also got ebony fretboard, black hardware, and this one's got a flame maple neck. I really like the black edges that go right up to the stone top, so you can't see any wood just looking at the guitar. The top looks like it's completely stone, and the light from inside goes right up to the edge of the stone. Gives a really cool aesthetic to the guitar. I don't really have that much else to say about this. The one thing is we do have LEDs in here, and those can create a lot of feedback, especially with pickups. And so one thing that happens, let's see if I get this thing going. With the lights dimmed, you get a ton of feedback, but the brighter that you make them, it's kind of counterintuitive, but you eventually get to a point where that feedback, for the most part, goes away. I can't hear it. I don't know if it's at a pitch that I can't hear or that the amp can't play, but at full brightness, little to no feedback, which is good. I did ground the LEDs to the guitar, which before I had done that, there was a ton of noise, a ton of feedback on whatever setting the LEDs were at. So that seemed to be the biggest thing with the feedback, was just not having it grounded. Let's check the weight on these things. They're not super heavy. 7.8 pounds. I'll do the orange one. 8.37 pounds. Not too bad. These are listed on my site. I will get to a demo here next, and that's it. Thanks for watching.